Hey, so we're going to talk about slide baiting. I don't have a camera person with me today. I don't know where the Mango Mongo is, but he's not here, so I'm just on my back porch. Hopefully, I can get through this because it's complicated. Grapple sinker, length of light leader, up to a solid ring with a swivel. The leader connecting the grapple to the ring and swivel, the stopper ring and the swivel, should be significantly lighter than the rest of your outfit. When this snags up, and I promise you it's going to, this is the bit of line or one of the knots that you want to break first. The sinker acts like an anchor to keep the line tight. The solid ring acts like a stopper to stop your slide from sliding all the way down to your sinker. I'm just going back to my old slide bait reel. Actually, my old slide bait reel, which I don't use anymore, but it's an absolute tank of a thing. I cannot recommend them highly enough if you're looking for a budget version to get into this. The idea being that you cast your sinker, the grapples, which I'll talk about later, stick to the bottom. The line stays extremely tight all the way through. Dropping things. This is what happens when I don't have a cameraman. And I attach a no return slide, which is just let down. This one's really, really short, just so it's easier for me to show you things on. But normally this would be about 1 meter long. A no return slide, which I then wind onto here, slide down the line, and off we go. So the key to successfully slide baiting and not getting snagged is that this line stays really, really tight the whole way through. These bend and flex, and they'll bend out sometimes. You can see a couple of these are starting to bend out already. So if you think this is letting go too easily and it's snapping over as they do when you pull them out, grab them here and bend them together to make this space between the two corners tighter, and that will then make for a tighter connection when you put your sinker back on. I'm just going to hook this down onto my box of sinkers and kick it over a little bit so we can just have a look here. And this line, I dropped my camera. This line then gets really, really tight. So what we do is, keeping that line tight, I'll just connect this, being my slider. Almost universally, when they open, you take the line from the non-open side to the open side and just wind it on once, twice, however many times you have to get it clean. Clicking it back secure, that's now on there. As long as the main line stays tight, this will slide one way, but not the other. It doesn't slide the other because of the angle that the wire's on. The fish or your live bait that's going with the tire or your dead bait will pull this way, and the moment it tries to pull back, it will turn to 90 degrees and just stop. So this is a non-return slider. You can get ones that just slide up and down. I don't know why you would ever want a bait to slide back up. So we tighten the main line, we connect our bait on, and we start sliding it down. We use these big pulsing motions with the rod to make this slide down further and further and further and further and further. Where this goes wrong is when you let the main line go slack and everything sinks straight down. If you're sliding at the warmies, it's really, really snaggy. And the moment this touches the bottom, it's going to snag up. Your sinker's probably snagged the moment you've cast it. You're going to lose some sinkers if you want to slide bait here. So sliding with the tide, make sure that your main line stays really, really tight all the way through. When I tie these rigs, unless I know exactly the bait that I'm going to work with, I'll always tie a suicide and a live bait hook. This lets me still use a single live bait hook, and this suicide hook can just sit here, or I can set up a two hook, a strip bait or a whole squid or something like that. Sometimes I'll just grab a different slide. If there's not a lot of tide current, sometimes you can use a weighted slide to help get your bait down a little bit more efficiently if there's not a lot of wash or a lot of side current. Or using something like a whole squid or even a little squid strip and light leaders and hooks. They'll just float, and they'll sit up on that. They'll sit up your line. They'll touch the water and they just won't go anywhere. Your sinker could be like a 30, 40 meters this way further down, and that'll just sit on the surface and not go anywhere. Sometimes you need to connect a little sinker onto there as well. Sometimes when it's really snaggy and you're using a live bait, you can put a little float on there, or a little bit of cork, or a little bit of polystyrene or something, which will keep, as your live bait pulls, it'll still pull down, but it will stay up, which will stop it a little bit from hitting the bottom. I'll just unsnag that. The longer your connection to the sinker is, the better. I can't think of any situation where a short connection there is better. Some guys tie a length with an impact, instead of tying it off to this, go through the eye of the swivel and tie an impact clip and then put the impact clip back on their sinker. The Dixon brothers do this in Western Australia. So instead of the 1.5 meters that you can cast with, they've got like 3 or 4, particularly if you're using a longer rod. When you're slide baiting, you're going to get snagged and lose tackle. That's part of the game. It's a really effective technique. It's just a pain in the ass to learn how to do. Identifying when to slide and when not to is probably as important as any actual bit of slide baiting technique you can use. A much better idea at the warmies, I think, is to figure out how deep it is, and just use any normal float with a stopper knot like I showed in the land-based game live baiting rig, and just try and keep it like 50 centimeters above the bottom the whole time. So because there's a lot of Dougie, the current pushes my live baits around, and it will. So because I'm just going to turn the camera around for a second, because that we use a technique called the Portland Shuffle. So if I'm here on the bank, the current's going this way, I'll cast one this here, wait for it to drift to the middle, and then my second one behind it. And quite often, 2 or 3 of us, when we fish Portland breakwall, there's always a little bit of side drift. So we just do like an Indian file. So one of the baits gets to about here, this guy reels this one in, walks behind, we change the rod holder over, and he casts this way again. Now that's going to be a lot of damage on over time. That's eventually going to kill your mullet or whatever you're live baiting with. But sliding at the warmies, the moment that main line goes slack, it's going to touch the bottom, and the bottom looks exactly like the rocks you're standing on when you're sliding there. And you're probably not going to get very far like that. It might work. I don't know anyone that's ever caught anything sliding a bait at the warmies. Little 4-0 hook under a float through the back of a mullet might be a better choice. But power to you if you can make it work. This changes depending on what the bottom looks like, the rock ledge you're fishing on, how high you are, what the tide's doing, how much wash there is, and so forth. But that's sort of the basics of how we got to be slide baiting things.